Me and
All right, we're
this.
live.
There you go. I'm just posting a link on Twitter for everybody. The timing was wrong. Me and Tevis are discussing Unity.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix. Okay, I always have YouTube here in the side because I prefer to um, just have the chat going on the YouTube panel, and whenever we start a stream, it like echoes. Whenever, so I gotta like pause the stream and let the chat keep going.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, the StreamYard does not have great. Oh, look at this. Kelly's already in there. See, we got somebody. Joseph, there you go. Um, so I did something weird. I don't know if you were paying attention to my tweeting. I was like yesterday before the announcement. Of course, I knew the announcement was coming, but I was like, you know what? Do I have to be with this guy John Rittatello, or do I have to stay in Unity? Like he's really ruining this company for me.
Hmm.
Even though I'm really bullish on the product, but I keep going back in that investor in me who's always like, you need both. You need both. You can't have one without the other. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, I love the product. Like I am actually using the product, and I think it's great. And I just don't like the CEO. So I sold.
Yeah.
I sold everything.
Yeah. That should have been the title.
That should be the title. I sold everything, and then like 2 minutes later, I'm like, "What have I done?" And Unity announces the changes, and I actually started listening to. I'm like, these changes are great. If they weren't such a holes in the beginning,
Yeah.
so we'll discuss the changes. But I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get rid of my whole position. So I was up on the position. That's the other thing. I was not down. So I sold being up, and I sold for what was it? 31 at 30. I sold at $31.93, and I had to buy at $32 exactly. So I lost 7 cents in the process.
Well, I mean, your average was like below 30, so I
Yeah,
think you're
those shares
fine.
actually, I looked at the shares I was selling. Those were 28.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I was up. So technically, I have to pay now taxes on the little bit of gain that I've had because I sold. Because then I bought it back, but I still have to pay for now for the gain. So now my average is $32. That's what
You're
it is now.
basically day trading Unity at this point.
Listen, I don't know what to do. I'm a little confused with this company. So because it's like the story of the product is fantastic. The story of the management is the worst fucking management
All
I've
right.
seen in a long time.
So I think Tanner might join us in a little while because I know he wanted to talk about this as well. So
Sure.
that might be.
All of a sudden it's growing, you see?
Yeah, I know. Okay, so if this has taught me anything, just if I can take away any lesson from this,
Hmm.
it is how crucial management is in the thesis of your investment, just story in general, and how much it made me appreciate Anthony Noto and the entire sort of management team at SoFi. Even though Unity,
I
like
agree.
I was in the same boat as you, right? Like Unity has this monopolistic advantage. It's like an oligopoly, basically. There's only two or three players in the space. It's really difficult for, and I know when I chatted about this with Tanner last night, he was saying he was on the other side of the fence saying that, oh, it's really easy to switch. And I said, no, 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 there's real switching costs involved because of the sunk cost of these firms, of these dev shops, um, game studios, I should say, that are building on these platforms, on these engines. But man, oh man, I saw Mark Whitten speak yesterday and just honestly answer a lot of these questions. And I was
Mhm.
thinking to myself, like, why is someone like this not the CEO? Like someone who actually cares and someone who actually, can step in front of the crisis. Like not only did John Riccatello completely fuck everyone without consulting anyone on the pricing changes and just cause havoc, just setting the entire game studio landscape on fire. But then he went and 2 weeks later, when they backtrack, he didn't even step in front of his own mess to own up to it. And I
So
just think that that's really
yeah, you're bringing up something very valid, and I did tweet. I'm like, maybe this Witten guy should be the CEO and not John Riccatello. So
yeah,
what's weird is that okay, when a problem happens at a company, you always see the CEO step up and do
right,
like a personal message, a personal announcement,
right,
and he's hiding.
right.
So is he hiding? And I want to get into this little clip of him of John Witten. Is that his name?
Mark Whitten.
Mark Witten. Mark Witten talking. explaining this. But he basically, the question was asked to him, who was responsible for
Right.
this? And he goes, well, we all were. We're as management. It's not, I'm in charge of I forgot what they call it, the creative, whatever department he's in charge of.
He runs Unity Create.
Unity Create. There you go. So he's like the responsibility falls on me. But I feel like you're right. John Riccatello is the one that pushed all this, made it happen faster because the stock has been tanking. It's under a lot of pressure, and they needed a way to just make as much money as possible. And Mark Whitten is the one who's like the fall guy here, but it's turning out to be the good guy here.
Well, so here, let me say one thing. Look, I've worked in this whole, in the tech space for years now, in leadership roles in the tech space, for years now. And just as a leader of your team, sometimes you're going to get executives who, like, you have to manage up and down, right? You're going to get executives who are biased heavily on the sales side or biased heavily on the engineering side, whatever. And then you sort of have to balance that out. And even though I know for a fact, right, in Unity's case, it wasn't like a group decision. Well, I don't know that for a fact, but
Yeah,
I'm strongly speculating it wasn't a group decision. It was something that came top down. And the fact that he said, it was a group decision and he owned up to it, that is a very pure leadership quality. Because essentially, like, if you're a good leader, a good portion of your job is to be a shit umbrella. And I had a manager once that used to say that to me. He said, shit just rains down top to bottom from executives, and good leaders protect their teams from that. And I think that that's one of the aspects when I was watching that talk on Friday with Mark Whitten. That's one of the things that I was like, wow, okay, like, he is owning up to not only his fair share, but also just saying, like, hey, it was a collective effort. Let's not point fingers. That's a good quality.
I agree. And but what's funny is if you watch the whole interview, I don't know if you've seen the whole thing, but he's always looking off to the side as well. So you can tell John Riccatello and the lawyers and whoever else is buzzing around him. And he's keeping very calm, I gotta say, because that is like the hot seat. He was in the hot seat. He went on a gaming channel too, which was very smart. A guy who has 200,000 subs and is popular in the Unity gaming community. So that was intelligent, not to just go on Twitter and do some stupid message, also to follow it up with this fireside chat type of a thing.
And it was a live stream with all the comments going in the side. And just, that was, for real, the hot seat.
So, I want to get to some of this stuff that I brought up, but what do you think about, because look, there's a lot, if you read the comments, and I've went to The Verge, I've went to the comments on this guy's YouTube channel for the gaming, all the comments are just bad. There's no good comments about people talking. Do you think that's the 5% that are leaving, I would even think half of those are not leaving, first of all, but what do you think about those comments? Are those people actually going to leave at the end of the day, or they're just venting at this point? Because like the problems have been solved once we discuss this.
Yeah, look, I do think that for things like this, there is like a Pareto distribution, like an 80-20 rule. I think a lot of the people are going to vent and get their frustrations out, and just in an effort to feel heard in the short term. And then that's going to fade away over the next couple of weeks, because they're just going to be, Monday is coming around the corner. They're going to be back to work using the same engine, so on and so forth. But I do think that the seed has been planted, the seed of doubt in people's minds. And I think that that's always going to be associated going forward with John Riccatello. To what extent people are going to action on that, I don't know. Definitely less than, what it was last week. People are going to say, okay, well, they reverted all the changes. And in fact, that we're actually getting some more benefits now than we were getting before with regards to, the splash screen and others. And so it's actually better. But in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, as an executive of a game studio or a small indie dev, shop, I'm always thinking they could always turn around and do this again, because the same person is at the helm of the company. And so I do think that a lot of it is going to be associated with the CEO, and maybe people won't leave immediately, but now it's an option, whereas before it wasn't even something that they considered.
That's true. So the problem is he brought it to the forefront, where like, oh, you made me think about this, and I was never thinking about it, right? So I was even like, my brother's been talking to me about different engines like Cocos 2D. He's a game developer, and he's talking. I'm like, why would I go there? Like, there is no reason for me to go there. If I'm making a simple iOS game, and all the education that I've been taught going to like university is all based on Unity. I keep going back to that being important. And by the way, they've solved that problem. So we talked about the educational thing. That's done now. That's not going to be a worry going forward. But so I'm like, why would I want to change? Why would I need to learn anything new? But this whole week I spent, like, literally, I downloaded Unreal Engine. Okay. And by the way, I couldn't even install it because they wanted 70 gigs on my computer. I was like, okay, now I got to clear out 30 more gigs. I only had 30 left. So I didn't get to actually run it all the way. That's a lot of gigs, by the way, because they have a high-end engine. So it doesn't even make sense for the game I'm making, by the way. Number two, I downloaded Godot. I don't know if you've played around with any of these.
Well, so what I was going to say, just Vitaly, just to support that, on YouTube, I was watching a couple of the Unity videos, just people reacting to stuff. I think Alex Ticker Symbol You made a really good sort of video on that,
and he sold out too.
And he sold out all his shares, yeah. But I do think that, like, I saw these YouTube videos of like, I switched from Unity to Godot, and here's like what I learned. I switched, and here's like my first 8 hours experience. All of those, multiple hundreds of thousands of views in hours of going live. Like, there is eyeballs on this right now.
Yeah, well, we'll see how long it lasts, and I think it's the 5% rule, not the 80-20. I think the 95% of people who just want to make money, Unity just made it very easy. And let's go to the rules for actually talk about what they changed. And I think they fixed all the problems, honestly. I'm going to share this, okay? Open letter. I think it's the open letter right there. So you got it up? And star Buccaneers. Yes, the CEO does need to go. So this is my only bear case right now, which is funny. It's an important bear case. It's not a small one, but so let's start at the top. Well, he apologized. Mark Whitten apologized, and he takes the blame. This is kind of amazing. I'm Mark Whitten, and I lead Unity Creative, which includes the Unity engine and editor teams. I want to start with this. I am sorry.
Right.
Which is, where is John Riccatello saying, I am sorry. I am the leader of this company. I apologize. So this is kind of amazing that this subservient person to John Riccatello is taking all of the blame. It's kind of crazy. This actually makes me think maybe the board is thinking John is out because like, why is this guy coming up to the forefront? I have no idea. But okay, let's finish this first. We should have spoken more with you, and we should have incorporated more of your feedback before announcing our new runtime fee policy. I don't think they talked to anybody, honestly. Our goal with this policy is to ensure we can continue to support you today and tomorrow and keep deeply investing in our game engine. You are what makes Unity great, and we know we listen to blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's go to the important part. Our Unity personal plan will remain free, and there will be no runtime fee for games built on Unity Personal. We'll be increasing the cap from 100,000 to 200,000. We talked, I think a week ago. Remember we talked about how they wanted to push everybody to Pro?
Yes,
so
exactly.
Now this is part of that Pro thing where you can keep the personal plan, but now your cap is going to 200,000. There's no runtime fee, but after 200,000, you do have to go to the Pro plan, which I think was the whole reason for all this anyway, to just push people away to the Pro plan.
Right.
So at 200,000, we will remove the requirement to use the Made with Unity splash screen as well. So you don't have to do the splash screen. No game with less than 1 million in trailing 12-month revenue will be subject to the fee. For those creators on Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise, we're also making changes based on your feedback. The runtime fee policy will only apply beginning next year, LTS version of Unity in 2024. So you don't have to worry about any other version right now, okay? And we will make sure that you can stay on the terms applicable for the version of the Unity editor you are using, okay? That's actually very important. Let's cover this in a minute. For games that are subject to the runtime fee, we are giving you a choice of either a 2.5% revenue share, or they're doing that, the calculated amount based on the number of new people engaging, which is the runtime fee. So really, they want their VIG. They want their 2.5%. That's what they're saying.
And this is the first time that they introduced rev share, right? Like, am I wrong on that?
So I thought rev share. Once again, I thought
I know Unreal does it. Like, that's part of their core model. But
I guess they didn't have any rev share, and they wanted some participation in the $1 million and up, the games that are being super successful.
Yeah, because all they do is sell like licenses, basically. I didn't know that. I thought they didn't have any rev share. I'm pretty sure.
Well, it looks from what we're just reading right now, it sounds like they never had any rev share, and I have to check this. I'm not actually sure. I thought they did for the upper tier, but I guess it was just a fee because they have an enterprise and they have like a pro plan, which every seat has to pay 2,000, and now the pro plan I think is like 4,000 a seat or something like that. So we can take a look at the actual. I brought it up, but it's interesting that all they really wanted at the end of the day was like push you to the pro.
Yeah,
that's obvious. Okay. And they wanted the ref share as a part of it. And the runtime fee was like this excuse but
Right.
really they just wanted to say we want to make a certain percentage off your games.
Yeah, and like, look, the motivations are obvious. You know, they want more money.
Yeah.
Um, um,
What a
but
weird motivation.
I'm not sure why. Like, it's so sudden, and it's so like, and then like, why now? Um, you know, I'm just trying to think of the context of them buying. Um, what's it called, iron source, and integrating that. Like they're already getting an incremental
Hmm.
revenue from the ad platform that iron source provided. So I'm just trying to understand what the reason is for the urgency of making such drastic changes. I mean, they could have rolled out a rev share fairly simply at any given time, right?
Well, that's a little bit interesting. The rev share thing, I'm surprised they didn't have it for the upper tier still, but let's say this is the new thing. I
Right.
think they were just waiting till they were more fully established. At this point, it's pretty clear they're fully established. You don't want to do that too soon. So, and the other thing that's happening is, like, let's face it, Unity is not profitable.
Yes.
So the employees they have, and I want to talk about that too. I don't know, we've ignored it, but they have too many employees. We should talk about that for a second. But
Yeah.
the fact is that they've been spending money like a drunken sailors. They bought Weta. I don't know if you went
Yeah.
over that at some point.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
bought Iron Source. So, and we can talk about why are they spending all this money on the acquisitions? First of all, like for example, Weta is a high end like film thing. Okay. Now I know that they don't have that market, and they're trying probably to get some of Unreal's market, but I don't know if that's the right path to do that. So they're burning through money because you're not gonna compete with Unreal. And I've talked to enough developers, and my brother also. He goes,
Mhm.
there's no competition there. Like if you want a high end AAA game or doing high end movie studio stuff, you're not using Unity. It's
Yeah.
not happening. So
Yeah.
you can buy Weta and you can try to get into that market. That's fine. Over time, it might work, but that's pointless. So how much do they spend on Weta?
Like 1.1 billion or something,
Yeah.
something
So
like that.
in my opinion, they're like burning through money. At least Iron Source things make sense because if they're going for iOS and or an Android, basically their gaming market, they own 70% of it. That makes sense to incorporate the ads. At least I
Yeah.
understand that part of it. So that's one thing. They're burning money too fast. They're not profitable, and their stock is falling. So imagine any new people who are supposed to be joining Unity.
Yeah, and like, look, so I'll just let Tanner in because he just joined.
Sure.
Um,
Is he even an investor? Let's face it. I mean, you an investor in Unity?
he was an
No, of
interested
course
party.
not.
Of course not.
Definitely not anymore.
Sorry, continue your thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I was gonna say was, if you're gonna double down on mobile and like that's the thing, then
Yep.
you don't need Weta, right? But if you're
Yep.
gonna diversify into like console gaming, high end, you know, the Unreal, like you're trying to encroach on Unreal's territory, then I understand why you would buy a lot of these platforms. But again, like I even think on the mobile gaming space, like it's too soon to make moves like that because
Yes.
you run the risk of spreading yourself too thin as a company.
Yeah. So, well, this is my problem with it, that you're not profitable even in the biggest segment that you're in.
Yeah.
So you are the leader in iOS, Android, all mobile. All mobile, they own it. Okay. This is not a, we're not discussing if they own it or not, whether they're a monopoly. They are. It's
Yeah.
can they make money doing what they're doing, obviously. And they can't even do that. How are they going to make money in AAA gaming when I'm serious. I've talked to enough developers. They're not going to use Unity. It's not going to happen. So I don't understand this push. I don't understand spending $1 billion as opposed to making your core product, which they've let sort of slide. There are bugs in Unity. There's lots of issues that they're not solving. They've let that slide more, but they're trying
Yeah.
to build this whole other business. I mean, these are bad management decisions. That's what I'm getting to. It's not bad product. It's bad management.
Yeah, and that's the heart of it, I think. So let's just take a step back because we sort of just like jumped into it. And I imagine that some people watching don't have all the context. I know Tanner might not have all the context because he's not a shareholder. So we can take a step back. Tanner, like, how caught up are you with the latest news on Unity's pricing changes?
I'm decently caught up in this current like the runtime fees and everything like this. Now their new solution, like we spoke about it yesterday. I mean,
Yeah.
it's I'm quite up to date. I hate this decision, and And not only that, I'm actually super bearish on Unity in general, not just because of this one change, but just going forward, it shows that pricing power is going to be really like they don't have such a sticky product where whenever they do make pricing changes that people have to stay. There's a mass exodus. And whenever two companies can have similarities in products where people can change product, then that really is a problem. Like you see Adobe, they can continue to raise their prices and you don't see a lot of people jump ship, and that's to their benefit, right? And I don't know if Unity has that anymore.
I think you're wrong, and it's because you don't know enough about, like you said, you're not invested, you probably didn't do research, but Unity does own 70% of the market. And on top of it, if you do try to go to a different engine, like let's say you do go to Godot, that's the other real similarity. It's not Unreal. Unreal is harder. So as a programmer, you will have to spend more time using Unreal. And a lot of programmers don't want to do that. When I even say programmers, a lot of developers, they're game developers. They don't want to spend their time programming in Unreal, in C and C++. They just don't. Even I don't. Okay. So Unity is incredibly sticky. The problem is when someone literally sticks their hand in your pocketbook, you have to think about whether you're going to stick with them. If Anthony Noto all of a sudden changes his mind and sticks his hand in your pocketbook again, you will have to think of SoFi as the same bullish investment thesis. It's the same for any company. If Coca-Cola raises their price 50 cents, you might go to Pepsi, even though you don't want to. It's the same thing across the board. So there is some competition happening, but they are a monopoly. They are not easy to leave. I know, like everybody keeps talking about, I'll just go to Godot. You guys don't know the difference. Godot doesn't have it's not feature complete. You will not get everything from that engine.
And this is sort of the problem that I was telling with Tevis. So one, I disagree with the idea that because they own 70% of the market, if they make changes and people are leaving, then that doesn't mean they're going to hold 70% of the market. So just because what they currently have doesn't mean
you're already assuming people are leaving. We don't know that yet. You've already jumped to the assumption that people have left, or a big enough percentage have left.
I mean, I don't know. I've been following the Twitter cases enough that you can see that a large amount of the indie developers that do make very sizable games. Now, I'm not talking about for their mobile side exclusively. I'm talking mainly from some of their indie developers from like Steam, like Terraria, Slay the Spire, some of these, best-selling games on Steam possible that were ran on Unity are absolutely scrapping future projects with Unity to spite them for this change. And so whenever this is what I was telling about Tevis, with the culture of gaming, I find that they will absolutely, take a financial hit themselves to spite the person that is doing them wrong in the community. And I believe that once that sort of ball gets rolling, Unity will be the enemy. And a lot of their changes that they make just show that, yeah, sure, they can roll them back and keep current clients, but how do you eventually you're going to have to increase your monetization eventually, and I don't believe that they're going to have that going forward.
Well, I have a response to you first. Okay, so if someone sticks their hand in my pocket and says, I want more money from you right now, the first thing you say is, well, I'm going to leave. I'm not sticking around anymore. And to make that public and to make sure the whole community revolts against that is the smart thing to do. After they changed the rules to be even more beneficial to everybody, they made it easier, by the way. Number one, if Unreal is charging you 2.5%, just think of it as a business decision. If they're charging you 2.5% and you're selling 1 million titles now, and you're not paying anything at all under $1 million, that's everybody. You as a financially intelligent developer will be like, well, I'm not going anywhere. Okay, so I'm not going to hit the $1 million because that's not happening. So I don't have to pay them. Maybe I might have to pay for the pro version, which is $2,000 a year, but that's it. Okay. So all of a sudden you're capped at around $2,000. And if you do have to hit over $1 million, I looked at the actual calculator, we can share it. You're paying like 1.5% in their enterprise level. You're not even paying the 2.5%. You're paying the lower fee of both. So you aren't thinking like a financial person here, because at the end of the day, this is a business they're running. If they say that Unreal charges them 5% for over $1 million and Unity charges them 2.5%, where are you going to go?
I think that I don't think that the large enterprises are going to leave Unity.
That's where all the money's at.
Sorry,
that's where all the money's at.
Yeah, but I don't believe that's true. I believe that the money's at the new players that you want to become enterprises eventually, and because of these changes, they don't know what's going to happen to Unity next. And although some people may not sell 1 million plus copies. That is everyone's expectation whenever getting into development, is that you are going to be a successful developer. And so they are going to consider the fact that,
I think you're wrong about that. A lot of developers know they will not hit 1 million. These small developers know they're not going to hit 1 million in revenue. I follow a lot of them, and they know they're going to make around 100, 200 grand. That's what they know. And that's why Unity hit that 200 grand price point in order to fuck them in the beginning. And that's been rolled back. So that's not happening anymore, where it could actually hurt them, because the 200 grand is where it can hurt them, this runtime fee.
Look, I think the crux of this conversation is, are game studios going to make a financial decision for their future, or are they going to make an emotional decision? And I think another layer to consider is the switching costs. And I know, Tanner, you say that there is no switching costs, but like, people are lazy.
I didn't say that. I said they will absolutely bear that cost.
Okay, but like, okay, so in addition to the financial cost, which is totally a decision that people can make if they're spiteful or whatever, there is also the factor that it takes time for those engineers and those developers to ramp up on another language altogether, right? If they wanted to go to Unreal, they would have to learn a completely different language. If they wanted to go to Godot uses GD script, it uses something else entirely. And so there are things, it's not a pure like financial decision to say, okay, these guys charge me 2.5, these guys are free, I'm just going to go over here for my next game. It's what is the ramp up time that is needed for me to learn an entirely new ecosystem.
Yeah, it's like saying, look, it's in the Windows world. We would say, I hated that Bill Gates was a monopolist and I didn't want to use Windows anymore. Yeah, okay. Good luck, buddy. It's a similar thing. Like you can go to Apple. Apple has almost one-for-one parity in terms of like using a software, but are you going to do that? Like, is that good for your business to do that? Like, you have to start thinking about other things besides just your feelings about that the CEO is a dick, which I agree. So,
Vitaly, I'm going to throw this up and then you can talk to this point.
You want to read it?
Yeah, so Christian says, here's the deal. People will use the tools they've been learning with, and Unity owns the college university market.
I said this is important. Yeah.
This is why I threw it up for you. The amount of learning material around Unity is the best in the development ecosystem. So the one thing I'll say on this before I let Vitaly speak is this is essentially the insurance policy they have on the future generations of new entrants into the game development space.
Yeah, so we talked about this. Did you see our thing about last week about the universities? Why that's important?
He doesn't watch my videos, man. Come on, let's be real.
What the fuck? Okay.
And by the way, my own content. Content creators don't watch other content creator stuff. I mean,
I watch your stuff.
I watch YouTube all the time, man. What are you talking about?
Well, Vitaly, you do this part time. I'm trying to like really.
I'm a part-time YouTuber. Well, totally. I could get offended at that, but those are real bricks, by the way, right?
No, absolutely
not. I'll afford real bricks when Tanner watches my video and I collect that ad revenue. How about that?
Hey, I put your stuff on the background and walk away. I try to get you that. I try to get you the ad revenue, but
yeah, I'm doing this on Tevis's channel. Get him some support. But university is incredibly important. So once again, my background is computer science, computer engineering. Say that again? I don't know. And Amit, you can learn real bricks. This is what real bricks look like. All right. So university is important. I have been taking computer science courses and gaming AI courses for a long time. And it's mostly Unity. They don't go to Unreal. There's no reason for them to do that. And it's an easier thing to teach the core concepts of game AI and game programming. So as long as they keep that market share, you got to understand there are tens of thousands of kids being brought up to use Unity. And that's why this was so important to me, that if they lost that market share because of runtime fees or something, where universities didn't know if they were tracking the tracking has gone away, by the way. It's self-reporting now. So these are actually very critical things. If they lost that, my thesis for Unity would go out the window. So I would immediately sell all shares and not even worry about it. But the fact that you are literally teaching the future generations of game programmers in Unity right now, that's an important thing. You can't discount that. A university changing its whole curriculum because of how they feel, that's not how this works.
No, I definitely agree with that. I think the problem is that whenever you have companies like you brought up Microsoft, or I said Adobe before, where they're already very profitable and their financial statements are sort of much better than Unity's, you can kind of survive a hit to your reputation while things sort of repair. Unity is not in that place at all. I'm not even set on the idea that if they could increase their monetization, that it's even a good stock. Like their stock-based compensation's out of whack, their net losses are out of whack. They're still trying to grow. And if you're trying to make plays where you're trying to increase your average revenue per user, and then it's backfiring like greatly, where's the ecosystem being created? Where's the moat being created? Just from a stock perspective, not in terms of who's going to own the market share here. I think the basis for the stock does change.
Tevis, if you want to answer, but I have a real good answer for him.
I just wanted to add one point. I think where I'll meet you guys in the middle is to say that the timing around it affects the response. Because if Unity had done this like 3 years ago, it would have been game over for Unity. Right now, it's like a conversation. But if they did this in 3 years in the future, the longer they hold off on turning on that pricing or that monetization spigot, the more of a monopolistic advantage they have, because there are no other real alternatives. And so that's why, to my earlier point, model. On the earlier point to the timing, I was just like, why would they do this now? Like, they've been unprofitable for a while. It's just, why are they rushing this decision? Because meanwhile, in the background, yes, they're unprofitable, but they're capturing more and more and more market share. Students are graduating, learning the Unity stack, onboarding onto the Unity ecosystem. And so if they'd done this a year, 2 years, 3 years, like whenever in the future, they would have a stickier product because there are fewer alternatives to switch to.
So you got to realize all the developers know Unity inside and out. You can't just go, I know people are talking about, why can't you switch to Godot? Joseph says, if it's close. There's lots of differences. You can't just port, for example, all the games you made so simply. Yes, you can open up your assets. Congratulations. Then something's going to break because it's not the same thing. It's not a direct one-to-one port. So now you still have to do all of that work. That's developer time, instead of making new games, worrying about new monetization. These are things small companies don't have the ability to do. And I am a developer, okay? I don't talk about this a lot, but I develop iOS apps in the App Store. I only develop for iOS, and I don't develop for Android. Do you know why?
Why?
Thank you for asking. It is almost impossible for me to develop multiple operating systems, because I just don't have, me personally, the time to go now work on a different system to hopefully make some incremental amount of money. That's an important thing. There are a lot of developers who are like me, who are small developers, who develop only iOS games and don't worry about Android, and only work on Unity and don't work on Unreal, because they don't have infinite time to do what you're saying, just switching. And especially if the costs are zero now to them, right? It's even better for them. There's no even splash screen. It's better now for them. Why would they leave? For monetary reasons, they won't leave. But to go to your point about the stock, because he did talk about the stock, the problem with Unity, there's two problems right now. Well, three maybe. John Riccatello is a terrible CEO. He has to go. I agree with you. You didn't even say that, but I agree with you that you're probably going to say that. Number two, why do they have 7,000 people working for them? Did you know that? Did you guys look that up? How many people they have working? Check the exact stats.
No, I didn't. No.
7,000 people. Do you know how many EA has? Which is worth like way more than, I forget. Look at EA's market cap, and they're profitable. They have 10,000 people. How is Unity not making any money, have 7,000 people working for them? So the one bull case we can talk about is fire half the people. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. Google is allowed to fire. Meta is allowed to fire. Unity is going to have to get rid of half those people. They don't need them. Okay, that's bottom line. And I think they probably have all these aqua hires, Meta people, not Weta people. They have the Iron Source people. They have all of these positions probably that they don't need anymore. So I think that's going to happen. Okay.
And I think this is a really good point, just to add on that. Like EA has their own, Frostbite is their engine. And with those 10,000 employees, they make their games and manage their own engine too. So it's a big thing, man.
Yeah.
Which is also, I think, a large part of this as well, is that if there is a possibility for the product that is close enough to be built in-house, that it might be worth the investment more, the people that were close to switching to Unity to be built in-house and get that R&D going, that there's now a larger opportunity that if the pricing power is there, or if the pricing power is not there for Unity, then people will just go and make their own software. That's a real issue for large enterprises. It means you can't capture them.
you're saying game studios are going to make their own. Well, look, EA is a different level. Most studios are not EA level. They're not going to be building their own tools.
But that's the audience, though, is that where do you make your money? You have to make your money on the clients that you're saying, okay, well, all the money's in large enterprise. Well, okay, well then if we can't capture Activision, if we can't capture EA, if we can't capture all these super large developers, then that takes out the equation from large enterprise into your ability. So then you're talking about indie gamers are your core audience, and they're leaving.
It sounds like you're saying something that is accurate, but it's not. Okay, because these major studios, they've always been developing their own in-house tools, or they're using Unreal.
Those names
or they're using Unreal, or they're doing their own tools. But there are lots of companies in between that are these larger 1 million plus companies that are not building their own tools.
A million to what? A million to what though?
Could probably be 50 million. Could be no one's at 50 million even building their own Unreal Engine. It's idiotic. EA is a different level.
Okay, so what if you start talking about something like a I don't know, Genshin Impact or something, one of these
it's like us saying like, okay, what we're discussing right now, just put it in other terms, is are you on Microsoft or are you on the Apple OS? And what is the likelihood of people switching from either of those to Linux? And what you're saying is just like, fuck it, let's write our own operating software.
No.
Let's download Android.
If you're from the Unity perspective, that's what you want to believe, is that you have a moat here that's similar to Microsoft versus Apple.
No, I'm a developer perspective here. I'm trying to give you that perspective.
No, it's
my job. Hold on. My job as a game developer is to make games, not to write.
But no offense to your ability to code, but you're putting yourself in the perspective of Activision. You have no clue how, like,
once again, Activision is a different level. You're talking about like 4 or 5 companies that own like gaming in total. They're using their own thing. They have proprietary tools 100%.
I know, but if you can't, the largest creators or the largest developers in the world for design and everything like this still use Adobe, right? They don't create their own tools in-house that replace Adobe. Adobe services large enterprise. Unity will not service large enterprise. And so Microsoft, all these players still service large enterprise. That's what makes the moat, is that you can't get big enough to leave the ecosystem. And you guys are laughing about it, but that's not laughable. That means that just the ecosystem in general is not sticky enough to keep people whenever they grow out of your size of need.
But that's fine though, because like we all roads come back to the use case for Unity and this whole idea of like them spreading themselves out too thin. I do think that, you know, Unity, okay, sure. If you're Rockstar Games, you're going to make your own engine. If you're EA Sports, or EA Games, you're going to make your own engine. Why? Because first of all, you have the resources to do so. That's thousands of developers, and the majority of Unity's user base is like a dev shop of 5 people, first of all. So resourcing is huge. The second thing is, if you're a huge enterprise, you want a game engine that is catered for your games, right? EA makes the same type of game copy-paste every single year. They make FIFA. It's the same freaking thing, man. A couple of stats change around the players, but fundamentally, like the foundation is the same. So that's the other thing. Like a lot of these game developers that are not enterprise, they don't need that level of customization. And one other thing I'll say, Tanner, that really bolsters that ecosystem for Unity is all of the acquisitions that they made thus far help in terms of the out of the box components that these developers have. Like they bought SpeedTree. They have all of these visual assets. Like if I want to build, a level in a game that has a forest, I don't need to design every single tree myself. I can just go to the app store and download an asset like package, and then I can just use the same trees that a million other games use because I have that ability. And so my point is that out of the box component is something that a Unity would provide or an Unreal would provide. And if I'm going to something smaller that's more boutique or even building something in-house, I would have to build every single little component from scratch. And that's fine if you have 5,000 developers building a super specific game. It's not fine for like 95% of the market.
I think I think what you're missing here is that when Rockstar Games makes a game, it takes 5 to 6 years because they treat it like they're making like a movie, a complicated movie. Most developing houses are not like that. Even if they're making millions of dollars, that's just not going to happen.
You picked a very specific developer, though. Most developers don't.
Well, I love Rockstar. I love their gaming. So,
Yeah.
But my point is that most of the iOS apps you see they're not EA level. They're just not. But a lot of these companies do make millions of dollars, and they have bigger teams, and they're not going to another tool if it doesn't make any financial sense. Like that's not how it works.
Picking those names, which maybe is my version of a bad example, but like you can look at the names like I said, Genshin Impact or Supercell or some of these names where they are mobile first, right? And they do get to a size where they do have the ability to start out like looking for developing their own software with all their own assets, and they don't need to go into Unity's asset book and use something from their libraries. That doesn't need to happen at those
okay,
sizes.
first of all, I think you're in the wrong topic because before they even, if they don't like Unity, they're going to Unreal. Okay, so I don't know.
But I don't think so.
Before they develop anything, they're going to Unreal. Okay, like it doesn't make sense what you're saying. Like I'm telling you, my brother works at a big company. I don't want to say which one. They're not making their own engine. This is a big company, billions or tens of billions of dollars. They are not making their own games.
You're too stuck in the now. I'm talking about there's no pricing power to this software that of course, right now, because they're so cheap that you can use one of the two softwares. I'm saying if they continue to push up these prices, if you guys think this is the last time that Unity will need to try to increase their prices, you're just dead wrong. They will need to continue to push the price up to make a software that is competitive with the likes of Adobe. Look at Adobe's price 10, 15 years ago. So it's nothing like it is today. The price has to continue to come up. Same with Microsoft.
Right, but like it's not. There is no correlation between a 2.5% rev share and that does not.
It wasn't that to begin with. They changed it because of backlash. They were talking about some people were doing the calculations somewhere like 14% of revenue.
No. I could actually bring up the revenue calculator. You want to see it?
Sure.
Yeah. Look, even if we leave the rev share, my point is, even if we measure licenses, right? You have to have licenses to be on this platform. However much it's costing studios, it's not
like $1,000 a seat, right? That's what it is. $2,000 a seat per year.
Well, here I'm gonna bring this up first. Yeah, to check this out.
Hold on, I'll put that up in a sec. My point is, it does not justify these studios to go all in house and build everything until they reach a certain critical mass where it makes sense from a financial perspective, and that level is so like stratospheric that most of these engines will never hit it. Right?
I think he's missing a couple of things. Once again, it has to do with developers as well, besides learning and the student thing that happens. So once you've bought a lot of assets, you've invested your time in learning an ecosystem, also the tools of the ecosystem matter. So once again, I don't know if you used Unity and try to compare it to Godot, but like, for example, there's no real asset store in Godot. So now all of a sudden, you might be able to use the asset stores from Unity, but Unity gets paid for that, even if you use it in Godot. So Unity's still getting paid something, even if you took those assets. I think you can carry them to Godot because it's certain files that are open in 3D programs, as long as you can read those files, obviously. But they have a massive asset store that makes it easy for developers right in the app to download things that they want. Now they're building a whole ad platform in, and I know they're trying to push people to it. But imagine you just do a one-click thing in the ecosystem and you're adding ads to the thing. It makes it easier once again for developers. And I try to use the easiest thing even when I'm developing. I'm trying to make a game. I'm not trying to make it difficult for myself. There are some people who want to make it difficult. So that's one thing. The other thing they're developing is this whole back end with cloud. I don't know if you've been paying attention to AI and cloud, but Unity is one of those companies that can afford to do that, right? And that'll be just integrated into your payment, your 2.5%. That'll just be part of it. And as they give you these more services, of course, they'll charge you more money, but they're giving you things that Godot will never be able to give you at that scale. They just won't. It'll never happen. Okay. So you're talking like literally apples and oranges because it's not the same thing. You're talking about the tiny developer or the massive developer. The tiny developer can say, I want to use Godot because he's not using all those tools because he's so tiny. He doesn't care. Then there's the massive developer who develops their own tool. But everybody in the middle who wants to make games, just get games and save money, is going to use Unity. Like there's no other option.
I know that it's not as simple as or easy. I know that there's a bunch of people that are not going to leave Unity, but we're talking about a growing stock here, right? There has to they're still in net losses. Still 20+% of their income is going to stock-based compensation. All of these things.
What happens when they get rid of half of those? Answer that question. What happens when they get rid of half of those employees, which they will do?
Well, I don't know if they will. And
they don't need 7,000 employees. EA, we just covered it. EA has 10,000. What do they have 7,000 employees for?
I mean, maybe. I like I said, I haven't listened to their call as close enough to know if they're going to have a mass exodus of employees. I think that they would have had a better time laying all those people off, during tech layoffs a year ago. But
They should have done that. I agree with you.
They should have done that, yeah. And look, I think we're sort of going into these rabbit holes.
But can I finish this though real quick?
But
is that like the big problem is though there needs to be a change with this stock. They're not in a comfortable position, and if you're looking to increase pricing power, yes, there will be a lot of students coming up, but it's like, are we waiting 20 years for this investment to turn around, or is there better plays out there? And so like I think some of the problems are like, yes, no, things will be fine, but as well, if you're cutting into people's profits on making games, then some studios just won't be able to survive either. Like you can't just take and ask for more and deliver more products.
Well, they're not doing that anymore. So the thing is, you're bringing up now like what happened a week ago, which I agreed with you on, but they're not doing that anymore. So
yeah, but
that's
then
not the bear case here.
But they still need to increase prices.
They are increasing 2024. Okay, let me make this clear. This runtime thing that's happening is happening now. 2024 LTS. That's their upcoming version. That means everybody right now is using anything besides 2024 version will not be paying those prices, those runtime fees. Will not be paying the 2.5%. So they've actually delayed their gratification till next year. And even then, what they said to developers, like, you don't have to switch to that. If you don't want to go to that next model, okay, that means we have no value to give you, and the previous model is doing the exact same thing. That actually means they have to innovate faster. I don't know if you got that little bit of it. At 2024, the next thing better be way better than the 2023 version. Otherwise, they're not going to get that 2.5%. No, they're not getting that runtime fee.
I agree with you, but then that also increased on their expenses as well.
Yes, so they pushed off being the bad guys until next year. And even then, that might not happen. That might be, we might have delayed the income we've gotten for this runtime fee for 2-3 years because people won't just adopt.
And that doesn't spell problem to you?
It once again, yes. In the short term, yes, Unity is an unprofitable company. But I'm telling you, the reasons they're bad, I'm giving you, I think the bull case is clear that they're a monopoly. That's still playing out. They've overhired. They have 7,000 people. They have to cut them. I don't care what anybody says. They have to cut those people. They have to start soon. And maybe management sucks. Number two, John Riccatello is a terrible CEO. He has to go. And in fact, the fact that this other guy, Mark Whitten, is in front in the camera makes me think that maybe is he out the door coming soon? Because why wouldn't the CEO be out in front of everybody saying, I'm sorry? I don't understand that part of it. So if those two things happen and they get new management that understands these things, I still think there's a bull case there. Is it hard right now to invest? I agree with you 100%. This is a very dangerous stock to invest, but the upside is so massive. That's why I'm taking a flyer with the half my shares now and not my full position.
Right. Well, guys, I got to let you go.
Thank you, Chris Standen.
What?
Thank you, Chris Standen.
I just wanted to add my extra thoughts. And obviously, I don't think that Unity is going away in anytime soon. I just think that companies that try to bring out new pricing measures and you see a pushback this hard really does show that they might not have as great of a moat as people once thought. I think it's a good test of the market. I think Toast is another great example of that, of just like failing to increase their prices without massive pushback.
Toast? I'm not sure. What is Toast?
A payment provider that I cover. They tried to increase their payment.
It's bread and butter.
Yeah. I'm a much faster grower than Unity. You guys should maybe check it out.
No, I'm good with fintech. I'm all fintech guys.
See you, buddy. Thank you.
It's good to hear his side because he's not wrong. And Unity is not a great investment for the people who don't understand, I guess, all the intricacies. I'm in the programming world. And so I see Unity as like one of the only players for game developers to use. The other thing we didn't talk about, which we didn't give the bull case on, it's not just game developers. They're doing this whole metaverse thing, of course. Yeah. They're doing this AR, VR thing. And they're doing this digital equivalence. I forgot what they call it, but digital doubles.
Digital twins. So that's all happening in the actual industries like car industries and whatever else have to use this. So I think there's a lot of really cool use case. Have you ever seen the videos of how of how that works. Like when they're designing a car, they can just render the entire model with all the parts and all the intricacies in a 3D rendering on Unity, and then they can have an actual engine to mimic certain environments, changes, and so essentially you can have this agency or this engineering modeling agency on the automotive sector if you're building a new model for a car, or if you're building, or if you want to like just try things out through Unity's engine. It opens up the enterprise space in other verticals in addition to gaming.
Yeah, so I think Tanner's coming from a point of like he's looking at the numbers, and he's right. The numbers really do suck, but he's not looking at, I think, the growth of the entire industry. That, in my opinion, everyone's going to have to use a product like Unity in their development, especially real products and anything with physics simulations, right? So cars are a perfect example. That's going to have to happen with whether you're using Unreal, whether you're using Unity. It's just another vertical for them to monetize. And the way they're going to monetize it is just a license fee. It's not going to be like a game. You download a game and there's a runtime fee. It's just going to be you pay the $4,000 per seat, and that's what you use.
Yeah, exactly. And look, and this is, I think, the fundamental takeaway is that the actual product is very good, and the positioning in the market is very good, and the prospects are very good. The management is very bad, and that's I think
true.
what it boils down to, right? Because management dictates the size of the company, management dictates the direction of the product roadmap, management dictates the pricing of the products. And so if we have a change in management, I think that is the key to unlock a lot of these second order effect problems. But if you zoom out, Unity still has a lot going for it, just on a fundamental basis, on their positioning of their company and on their core product offering. So I do think that the problem, and something to counter Tanner's earlier point, is that I think a lot of the anger right now that we're seeing and disappointment, this is a hypothesis, but I think it's not, as we let this cool down, I think it's going to be less targeted towards Unity as an engine and more targeted towards Riccatello as an individual, as the person who was the sort of end of the line making that call. And that's going to put more pressure on the board. And if and when he's fired or retires, because he's 65 years old, if and when he leaves, I do think that Unity can preserve the reputation that it has with game developers, because this is going to be a misstep of not the company, but the actual executive.
Yeah, I agree with you. And other thing I've been thinking of as Unity tanks, and it's probably, even though I bought my shares, half my shares back in, I bought him back. And I think Unity is a candidate for being acquired by somebody else. And it's probably not going to be Apple, because they're not going to be allowed to do it, or Microsoft. But I could see like EA or Rockstar Games, or somebody who wants to own a piece of the mobile market, wanting to take a $10 billion company. I mean, like, there's a lot of companies out there that can swallow up Unity. I don't know what the multiple will be, but it seems like it should be obvious to a lot of people to want to take this over and get rid of Riccatello.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, AppLovin, their offer last year was double what we're currently at.
They did. They offered 20 billion. Was that right?
Yeah.
So here's a question. Can AppLovin just go buy up all the shares and say, I control the board, and fire Riccatello? Can't they do that?
I mean, I'm not sure what the allocation is, but I'm sure they can do that.
I mean, if you buy 20% of it, probably you have you get a board seat or something like that.
So you can have an activist investor come in here and then switch things around. There's a lot of possibilities, right? Like
that would be quite a power move by AppLovin. That would be.
Well, especially because I think a lot of the rationale behind this move was to push people to Iron Source, just to kill AppLovin. And so
I think that's a secondary thing. I still think that the pro thing, they want 2,000 VIG from all of their developers. They want the $2,000.
Yeah. And look, I think if you look at AppLovin's stock, how it's performed since they made that offer versus Unity stock, it's a completely different story. AppLovin's been appreciating all year. Like, it's up and it's growing quite rapidly, whereas Unity has just taken the opposite route.
And Riccatello is the problem, honestly. So once again, I'm stuck in this position where this is a terrible investment because of management, but not the product. So And I remember the last time I invested in a product, like FUV was my last worst investment. I liked the product so much, even though I didn't drive it, but I liked the product. And the management was just utter garbage. And I feel like we're in a similar position that Riccatello is really bad at also talking to people. The more I keep listening to his interviews, like the shit he says, he called developers fucking idiots. Did you hear that part?
Yeah, like explicitly, like quote unquote fucking idiots.
Like, I don't understand. Like, this is your lifeblood for the company, and you're cursing out your actual people who are paying you money. So I want to share. You want to actually end this with a couple of actual quotes from this guy, Mark? I have a couple of things that I brought up.
And I know a lot of people in the chat are bringing up Apple and Meta. I do think that, both of them, it's going to be an uphill battle from a regulatory perspective to buy Unity. But as Apple and Meta compete head to head in that AR space, as that gets bigger and bigger, and they need to build a new app store on, headsets now instead of iPhones, I do think that Unity is going to be a core player in that, and they can set their eyes both on Unity. Apple has partnered with Unity for their Vision Pros. Meta tried to buy them out in 2013. Like, they are interested parties with regards to a buyout.
Well, someone brought up Adobe. I think Adobe would easily buy Unity. I don't think they would be stopped.
Yeah.
And I think $10 billion for the company. I mean, they're probably gonna have to pay multiple, let's say 30, 40 billion. To me, that's like a no-brainer for them to now own not only desktop publishing and Photoshop, and they have video programs like Premiere. Now they would own like sort of gaming on mobile platforms. It would be a crazy move, in my opinion. So let me share this, and then we'll share a couple of clips of this guy talking. This is Mark Whitten.
This is the talk that he gave yesterday.
Yeah. So this one, I'll jump around a little bit. This is just where he discusses the overview from his words. So let's see if you believe him, because he does look around too. So let's just watch this guy and his body movement as well a little bit.
Just catching up right now, and maybe hasn't seen the post.
Yeah, there's a long fact with a whole bunch more details, but I think I would just really maybe hit 4 key areas. The first one, I'll just start by talking about Unity Personal. That's the version of Unity that's free to use. It's used by the majority of all of our game creators. It's not a part of the runtime fee program at all. And we made some other changes along with that. The first one is we made sure that people have the option to remove the Unity splash screen if they would like when they're using that particular product. And we're also changing it so that before, the way that Unity Personal worked is you could use it up to $100,000 of revenue for your company. Now it's $200,000, so twice the size. So it's easier to use for more people, covers more cases, and it's more flexible. So that's number one. Not a part of the program, totally free. Majority of our users, and a lot more flexibility. And again, because we've announced some other changes around sunsetting Unity Plus, that means that you can use Unity Personal and not have to do the splash screen, which is a reason that some people were using Plus. So then if we move on to the runtime program. So the runtime fee applies for people who are over both $1 million in sort of trailing 12 months revenue, money they've made over the last year on kind of an ongoing basis, and 1 million engagements with new users, essentially. And for those users, there are the following changes. The first one is, this is with next year's LTS, which would be, what is 2023 LTS shipping in 2024. So it doesn't impact any games that have currently shipped, and it doesn't impact the games people may have already been working on for a very, very long period of time. One of the most, I think, really key pieces of feedback we heard is that it was a really big business model change that people didn't expect. And so it's very clear to us that having it start on a future version where everybody can make the choice to use it is really, really important. The second that we heard along with that is that people need to know that they can rely on a set of terms when they start using a version of Unity. So we're going to make sure that that's the case. There are even some pieces about that, things like the GitHub repo that, by the way, I will just say, prior to last week, I did not know existed. And now I know a lot about, and we're making sure, I think it's already back up there. It has all of them in there. Obviously, our website will always have our legal terms and terms of service and all of those sorts of things, but we're going to make sure it's also on the GitHub so people.
So anyway, what do you think about him? And do you believe him?
Well, okay, so here's an interesting piece. Let me just bring this.
Yeah,
up.
and then we'll go to some other clips I have lined
Yeah.
up.
Here's an interesting piece, right? In the note, he says, "I'm sorry," like personally takes responsibility for the actions. In there, he said, "I didn't even know the GitHub repo even existed." So when you piece those things together, like this is someone who is like stepping in front of it,
Mhm.
even though it wasn't his call directly. And like that's the indication that it wasn't his call. He didn't even know this GitHub repo existed. And meanwhile, it was taken down in April of 2023, like preempting this move. So that's piece number one around just Mark Whitten.
So the question is, do you think John Riccatello even knew a GitHub repo existed? Like that. Do you think the CEO even knew that? Maybe he didn't even know that.
Who took it down then?
Well, no. Obviously someone took it down, but I wonder if wasn't malicious in the intent, or it was malicious by the people who were architecting this.
I mean, come on,
the
man.
number pushers.
The timing is way too convenient for it to not.
You got a point on that. I'm not going to argue that the timing is convenient,
So,
but I don't even know if John knew about that. I just think once the plan was being set in motion, whoever the underlings are, they started killing whatever could change.
I do think that John knew, and here's why.
Okay.
Because the GitHub repo was the crucial nail in the coffin for it to be a retroactively applying change. Basically saying, fuck your terms and conditions. We are going to charge you for games that you delivered 2 years ago. And if initially the runtime fee was going to apply on a lifetime basis, not on a 2024 forward basis. The GitHub repo is necessary to make that happen because the previous terms and conditions said that basically, new versions apply to new versions and old versions, you can preserve these terms and conditions, right? So that's why I think it was malicious in that sense. And that's why I think John knew. So that's point number one. Point number two, just on that clip, I think in general, the piece that will win Unity a lot of trust is the thing that Mark Whitten said, where, hey, we want to ensure people that any future changes we make, you're going to be notified ahead of time. You're going to have ample sort of, consultation for any future changes. And we won't mess around with your terms and conditions anymore.
For whatever software you're using currently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think that that's a piece that I think does a lot to mitigate some of this damage, because if I were a game studio, the thing in the back of my mind would be they can always do this in the future. And I want something in paper on writing to say that they can't.
Well, the thing is, I think he answered that, and I'm not sure where exactly talking to this guy, but it's like a company can change any moment their conditions. So let's say you're using an iPhone and then Apple changes the conditions on you. If they change them on you, then obviously you have a choice whether you continue using the product or not. But let's face it, companies will do this in order to make their lives better, right? Because they're obligated to investors and not to their developers, unfortunately, right? Yeah. They're obligated to their investors to continue making money. So all of these companies at the end of the day will do what's not in the best interest always for the actual end consumer, in my opinion.
But that's just a facet of all public companies, right? Like this is why, you can.
Right. So, but my point is, you're not going to get this in writing the way you think it is. It's not a legal document per se. It's them saying from now on, the terms are, if you're using this Unity product right now, these are your terms. If you use the next one, you have to follow the next terms.
But that does have legal standing.
Oh yeah, I agree with
when
you.
you sign that, it's implicit agreement in the terms and conditions. I can go to any judge and I can say, hey, look, this was my policy that I signed. This was the agreement that I signed. And now they're doing something completely different.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, they still effed up and they changed it to say, get rid of those terms and conditions. The ones you agreed to.
Like they didn't do absolutely a single thing because the changes didn't go into effect on September 13th. They go into effect on January. So they can say whatever the fuck they want until January 1st. Nothing is legally holding until January 1st.
Right, but you know what I'm saying? Like they were retroactively changing it when they shouldn't have.
100%.
So absolutely, that was happening. So I mean, I know people are saying, can you trust Unity moving forward? But you're right. This was always legally dubious what they were doing. It was always like, you can't really do that. And they would have been sued by every bigger game studio.
1,000% there would have been lawsuits when it went into actual, when it went live. But
so this was smart to roll it back. This was actually smart legally to roll it back.
Legally, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next little clip. Let me just bring up the time code. And this is interesting where he talks about responsibility. So let's see what he says about this.
Once.
All right. So
yes. By the way, yeah, if it was easier, it's like make your own Fortnite. I think that problem number one there is that's extremely impressive.
Oh, this was interesting. They actually brought this up. Like, make your own Fortnite. You should make your own game. And I actually agree with that. Like, they should make something that they can make monetize, just like Fortnite is monetizing. But anyway, that's a separate conversation. It's still interesting.
Those are solutions that a developer executive would, or an engineer executive would come up with, not a sales guy executive.
Yeah, but bingo. There you go. Bingo.
yes. No, I agree.
Okay, here. Actually, this is
obviously
right here.
internal. Well,
who is all right? So the next question is a pointed one. Who is responsible for the policy and its decision to roll out?
Well, listen, this is my part of the business, and there's a lot of people, obviously internally, that have worked on this. The executive team has worked on this, but I'm responsible for what we're doing inside of Create. The entire executive team has been a part of this. But I'll also say this is really important for Unity. We have to focus on building a strong, sustainable business that allows us to continue to invest in the ways that we want, so we can build the best game engine that hopefully everybody wants to use to make great games.
So there you go.
I tend to agree.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, he tells you the answer if you're reading between the lines. The entire executive team had a part in this. This is my department, but a lot of people worked on this internally, and all the executives, had a part.
And then they told me to go up in front of the camera. They're like, take the bullet for the team.
And look, I can't imagine. I was thinking this as I was watching it. I can't imagine that morale in the sort of upper echelon of Unity is great right now, just because if I were Mark Whitten, I'd be pissed to step in front of the camera and own up to something that wasn't even my decision, or that I might have been vetoed on by Riccitello. So I would imagine that, the theory of the board grooming Mark Whitten to step into a leadership role at Unity, that would be something that would appease my initial, frustration and hesitancy to step in front of this mess that I didn't cause.
Yeah, this is weird. So I wonder, once again, is this the CEO telling him to go do this, or is this the board saying, we don't want the CEO in front of the audience. We want somebody that they can trust in front of the audience. And because I'm sure they're reading all the pushback against the CEO and what he did with EA. They're not idiots. They know what's going on. So, but why did they hire him? I just don't understand.
There you go. Yeah, because he was clearly fired from EA. He wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go to bigger and better things. He was ousted.
Is it because Unity at that time was a lot smaller? So, no, honestly, at 2017 or so, when he got the job, Unity was a lot smaller. So maybe they're like, okay, maybe this guy from EA can help us generate some buzz around the company and make it bigger.
Yeah, I know. I just laughed at this, like the PR team, who's probably having a nightmare right now. And, just thinking about, like, if they put John Riccitello up there, he would read the live chat and just call the fucking devs like fucking idiots or something. Like,
you developers are idiots.
Yeah, you guys don't know what you're doing.
All right, maybe there's one more. Let me see. I wrote some notes. Stock selling. Okay, so we talked about John Riccitello selling like 2,000 shares. Like, that was a big deal.
It's like not a big deal at all.
Well, listen to this little part. Why not? And then we could end it with some thoughts. 32. All right. Are you sharing?
And selling complaints, because I expect you probably can't talk too much about it because I don't know anything about stock laws and all that stuff. But I've seen all kinds of conspiracy theories posted about how people want Microsoft to buy the company and they're selling all their stock and all kinds of different things. And I have no idea how much of it is based in any kind of fact or rumor or just totally made up or what. So, and some of it's about, like, I know there were some complaints about JR selling some stock, which I assume he does regularly though. And I don't really know. So can you talk about this and just explain that situation, or is it something?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer it. I mean, the simple truth is that all of the key senior executives have extraordinary rules, like legal rules on when that they can trade stock because they have material non-public information or whatever the term is. And so for almost all of us, they're on this plan, 10B something plan, that you sort of have to commit the stock here, and then it sells on a certain number of times, and you have no control over it, because the only way that you can actually trade the stock is to make sure that it trades in a way that you have no control. So that stuff happens, and every time it happens, anything else that's happening, someone says, aha, they did this thing, when typically it's either, that automated plan, or that it was being, some shares were granted, and then that was the taxes that were being sold or whatever.
Anyway, I think he's basically saying this is a nothing burger in terms of the stock sales.
Yeah, I mean, it might be pre-planned for Riccatello, but I don't think it was pre-planned for the who was it? Was it Sequoia or?
Yes, I think Sequoia sold basically 70% of their shares on 9/15.
Yeah.
So, but even they kept a little bit just to say, hey, maybe this is not. Maybe John is out, and it is interesting.
And it's crazy. Like, if I were Sequoia, like, I would just try to say, okay, well, I recognize the positive aspects, like the reasons why I've invested in this company in the first place. If I'm going to have any hope of making a change, I would stay invested and have my seat on the board and try to oust this guy, as opposed to just being like throwing up your hands and selling at a loss.
Well, it's that, but maybe they've been dealing with him for this last 6 months, and they're like, this is not working out for us, and this is like the final, nail, because he's not been a good CEO this whole tenure.
Right.
The one thing I could say positive about John, maybe he brought Unity to going public. Maybe he took the company in that direction where they did grow in terms of market share. That's possible. Mm-hmm. But at this point in the company's progress, I don't know. If he leaves, my bull case all of a sudden returns. So, but I am fearful about my investment, even though I'm going to hold on to it. The last half of my shares, I'm going to hold on to it, because look, it's a monopoly. At the end of the day, I don't know. You could have hated Microsoft in 1985 and done incredibly well if you just held it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that's a good note to end on. What do you think?
In terms of what?
To end the stream on?
Oh, yeah. I guess those are the final thoughts. My thesis, if you haven't heard it yet, is buy monopolies, and then if you have 5, 6, 7 of them, I'm assuming 1 or 2 of them will not go bankrupt, and they will do incredibly well. Mm-hmm. And if that happens, then I think I do good as an investor. And then even if 3 of them, 4 of them go bankrupt or don't do well, just stay flat, whatever. And Unity's not going away. Let's face it. It's not going bankrupt. It's just going to be flat, if anything.
The interesting part, Vitaly, will be to see the reception of this a week, a month, a quarter after this happens, because things like this do die down. There is a news cycle. It does exist. And some new fire will happen with something else in the industry, and it'll die down. I think the important part is that they reverted the changes, and they actually made it more beneficial now for the majority of their user base, with regards to the 100,000, 200,000, the splash screen changes, and giving them the choice to say, do you want rev share or do you want another model after they reach 1 million? So
can I share the calculator? I'm glad you brought that up.
Sure.
Actually, that's something that's useful. Now they have a calculator that you can say, how much do you owe Unity? Let me present this.
Who brought this up? Who made this?
So this is Unity's.
Okay, Unity themselves.
Unity has a runtime fee estimator they should have had this right away. This is idiotic. They didn't have this. This is how unprepared they were. But Unity Personal, if you put, obviously, my business revenue exceeds 200,000, no. Mm-hmm. The runtime fee only applies to Unity Pro and Unity Enterprise. So you don't even have to worry about it, right?
Right.
So yes, my business revenue exceeds 200,000. Well, don't worry about the runtime, but you have to go into the Pro. Remember, they were pushing people to Pro? Mm-hmm. Upgrade to Unity Pro. So, okay, so now you go to Unity Pro, and you're like, my game exceeds 1 million. Remember, most people are not going to make $1 million.
Right.
And so you put no. Well, fee doesn't apply to you. You don't have to worry about it. Okay. And as soon as you start putting yes, that's what, I made 1 million. My game over has 1 million initial engagements. It also has to have that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Now all of a sudden you can take a look. Okay, I made 200,000 in revenue a month, so I pay the 2.5%. But if my this is called initial engagements, it's not even downloads anymore, and this is self-reported now, by the way. So they're not tracking this. You could tell them my engagements were whatever, 20,000. 30,000. As long as it's under the 2.5%, you actually end up paying way less. And remember, you're making $1 million here. So
Mhm.
now you're paying Unity. This is what I mean. This is a financial decision. If I'm looking at this, I make $1 million. Do I care about $3,000?
Well, so this is the thing, right? Like, do I want to pay 2.5%, which is what, $2,500, or sorry, that's $25,000, or do I want to pay the runtime fee?
Yeah, here is the, just to put it, if I increase this and I increase this all the way, a lot of engagements, it's $5,000, buddy. That's it.
Mhm.
So 2.5% works out to $5,000. Is that something that's going to stop a business now from using Unity? I mean, that's idiotic. Of course not. Like, it's just it's not even, it's a nothing burger anymore. All they did was like create a lot of havoc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Oh yeah, and Rangu, yes, this is why we appreciate management like End Phases. That guy's a baller. Absolutely. Absolutely. And he gives it to you like it is, how it's happening, everything in his earnings calls, not to make this an End Phase episode, but that management, along with Nodo,
mhm.
even Nodo, I consider like they tell you exactly what's going on. They're telling you exactly how they're trying to grow the business before they start fucking everybody. Okay.
Right.
And it's crazy. It's like, it's night and day management. Yep. All right.
Perfect. Well, Vitaly, thanks for jumping on and covering this with me, and thanks for the people who sat through and listened to Unity. I think there's pros and cons, and we sort of covered the full spectrum, especially with Tanner being here, also providing some of the more bearish takes, I would say, or the contrarian point of view.
Mhm.
We'll see where it goes from here, honestly, and yeah, I'm curious to see. The next earnings call, what happens with
Oh yeah, you want to do a live earnings call? I would do that.
I'm down. We can do that.
I love talking about Unity because like I actually enjoy the product, and if I like a product, I'm more passionate about it.
What I will say is that I did sell a portion of my position, maybe about 25%.
Okay.
And
Smart.
just reducing some of the risk. I put it into SoFi.
Not smart.
Concentrating even heavier into SoFi.
Right, as it tanks too. Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it tanked, right?
Yes.
And so, but that doesn't mean that I'm like averse to buying back in or even buying heavier than I am currently. It's just I need to see the things that I'm tracking going in the right direction. I think we mentioned a lot of those on this call. So,
do you want to end with a chart? I actually do think Unity's going down. Do you want to end with that?
Let's do that.
Yeah. So I track Unity. Let me just bring up my trading view.
When is their earnings? Do you know?
I forgot the actual number. Oh, when is the earnings, not the actual earnings? Okay. I think they lost though 200 million, somewhere around there, or 170 million, and that was a good quarter. Hold on a sec.
It's on November 8th.
Oh, November? Oh, wow. Okay, that's Q3?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, let me just share this. Okay, I think this is the Unity chart. All right, so you see it?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so I mean, I've been tracking Unity, and I was hoping we hold above the 200-day, and we have not. This particular event made us crash right through it. So that means I think next support is 28-ish or so. So I think we're going down to around 28. And after that, it looks like we can fall down to as low as maybe 25, 24. Look, this could bleed. Absolutely. And there's a bunch of support here at $24, $25 that we can land on. Let's hope it doesn't go all the way down to here, but this was around $20 when it fell. But it seems like there's some support here. And hopefully if they've readied their ship and Q3 is not terrible, I think we do end up here. Having said that, I'm not selling that last little bit because at the end of the day, I still want to be invested in a monopoly. So I'm not trying to trade in and out of this thing, I've decided that I'm willing to lose that money, quote unquote, lose. And that's just going to, whatever's in there right now. But if we hit 24, I probably will be going long.
Yeah. You're just buying heavier, you mean?
I will buy back the shares I gave up on because I think then they're just bleeding because of like fake news type of things that are going on. I don't think developers, from my experience with developers, will want to leave something that they've learned 5 years learning. Like it just sounds stupid to me. Like you're going to screw your business because you hate the CEO. That's the reason. I don't work that way. It's a numbers game.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. What was previously and what is currently, the percentage that Unity makes up of your portfolio? Like, was it a huge percentage?
Oh no,
before?
it's always been tiny. I don't even know what the it's probably under 1%. It's
Oh,
always
okay.
been small. I've never had. You don't need a big position for Unity to do well. Like if we're right about Unity at a $10 billion market cap and their monopoly in VR, AR,
Oh, yeah, they can
gaming,
be huge.
metaverse. To me, these 100 billion business seems like a no-brainer if they are successful in it. So there are
Mhm.
10x's here built in to place if they don't, what is it called? If they don't mess it all up for themselves and for us, right? So
Mhm.
I don't need a big position. 1% could lead to 10%, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And good buy price. I think we just covered that. I would say if you don't care about Unity, I wouldn't even touch it until it's $25. I wouldn't even. There's no reason to look at it. I just don't want to miss for $5 to me. Like I'm not going to miss Unity's upside for $5. So that's what I decided like yesterday. It's like stupid.
Mhm.
Can it crash lower? Yeah, of course it can crash lower. But that's assuming Unity's making a lot of bad moves, and then I'll reassess.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it could go down there. It depends on the macro too, right? Like if we have another bad macro week, it could absolutely go down there.
I would say we're pretty much going down there. We didn't hold 200-day. So I hate to be so like, oh, this is definitely happening, but I would say we have a bigger chance now with this still on people's mind than not.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah. Well, that's why I feel better that I sold half my position. That's why I sort of and the thing is I sold it higher. It was around $37 when I was selling it. So thank goodness I did that. But now, whatever. I'm gonna hold the rest because this is a long-term play. Unity's not gonna be in charge of the world and the metaverse in 2 years. It's gonna take like 10 years for this to play out,
Mhm.
So I'm willing to wait on some plays, especially when it's under 1% of my portfolio.
Perfect. Well, I think we can end on that. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll have more Unity coverage if anything big happens, and we'll probably cover the earnings live as well. So tune in for that.
Unity Weekly, baby.
Yeah, let's go. All right. See you, everybody.
All right, later.